So, topic today, as we enjoy our morning cup of coffee, cheers, is Apple and Xiaomi, right? So, some of you may know that Apple cancelled something called Project Titan, which was meant to be the Apple EV autonomous car. It's not really entirely clear what it was, but it was meant to be the next great leap forward in cars. And there was this sort of sense that Apple was going to bring the iPhone moment to cars and redefine the future and, blah, blah, bullshit, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't really materialize. And after spending billions of dollars and lots of time and effort and many years, they just wrote the whole thing off, right? And that's sort of, that can be chalked up to innovation is hard and sometimes you take great leaps and they fail. And there's truths to that, of course, but then we look at Xiaomi. Xiaomi is a Chinese company that sort of has done an amazing job of carving a little niche for itself. It's one of the world's largest phone producers, but doesn't have tariffs imposed on it like Huawei does. It kind of plays under the radar a little bit. They've built a fabulously successful electronic product ecosystem. So, whether it's smart light bulbs, vacuum cleaners, hair dryers, water filters, all these sort of little everyday electronics that you don't really think about, but actually turn out to be very useful. They're very high quality and don't really cost that much. And so what that means is that they really are able to have developed a mastery around the practical aspect of integrating electronic hardware and software, right? Really bridging that gap together. And that's a really important thing to note, because one of the things that's unique about China is you have the proximity of the design and the software creation and the hardware creation, and then of course also the marketing and the consumer. So it's all very close together, and you have these massive ecosystems there where it's very it's very easy to find a factory that can produce these things and produce them very quickly. Whereas if you're in America, you need to go find a factory in China, get it produced there, get it shipped back over, and it's very laggy. There's a lot of cycle delay there. And the reason why this is important is because out of nowhere, Xiaomi last year announced their EV, and it's been spectacularly successful. They sold hundreds of thousands of it. They got loads of pre-orders. It's getting rave reviews, and all in all, it's doing really well. And so if you're interested in the innovation game like I am, and innovation strategy, you're asking yourself, what the hell happened? How could Apple fail to produce a successful car, whereas Xiaomi has? And that's, I think, really worth unpacking a little bit here, because it doesn't make any sense at first if you take traditional thinking into account, right? Apple has more money, Apple has more experience, it's much deeper in terms of its history, right? We're much better known brand. And but there's, I think, just part of the stagnation that's creeping into Apple is just a bit too full of itself. It's just a bit too arrogant, and it's just not actually that clever, and it's not that great, actually. They had some successes in the past, yes, and they certainly were pioneers, especially in mobile. But, what else have they done that's interesting recently, right? They just build new versions of the same thing, and that's important, and that obviously makes a lot of money. But I don't think that they really stand tall in saying they're pushing the technological frontier, and they are really kind of losing their way in being able to figure out where things are going forward. And I think that's evident in the fact that they failed in this car project, right? This was meant to be one of the big leaps. So if you combine that failure of the car project, Project Titan, with the failure of the Vision Pro, the virtual reality goggles, we're starting to see this element of significant failure creeping into Apple. Now, people will point out that in the past, Apple has made leaps and those devices didn't work out. I believe the Newton is one example of that. And yes, that's true. But one of the things that is added to the mix here is that there's just a lot of other companies in the world now that can do it better, right? And I think that's really where we're starting to see the edge go to other places. I was absolutely amazed relatively recently when Huawei unveiled the triple fold phone. It's just it's a masterpiece. It's unreal. I got to see it actually in holding it, and it's just a masterpiece of design. Apple doesn't have anything like that. They don't have any folding phones. Do they need it? Do they not? Well, time will tell, but they're not in the game, right? So they're not in, they're just not getting it right. And I think that shows a stagnation, but that's particularly dangerous because there are other companies out there that will leap into that space and aggressively push it forward. Samsung is another example of a company that has also been pioneering folding phones. And there are many more on the way now, right? So now we have a situation where Huawei and Samsung are arguably out innovating Apple, and not just them, but there's Xiaomi in the mix, and there's many other organizations too. So I think what's really challenging here for Apple is the fact that there are many other players in the game, and they're not really able to find a way in which they can compete with them. These other players like Xiaomi are faster, they're more aggressive, they're more innovative, they're able to get products into the market that sell. And this starts to raise significant question marks about what the future viability of Apple is. The idea that you're going to remain locked into the Apple ecosystem for life it really seems to be a lot of the fundamental value proposition of what Apple is really about. But one of the things that's happening very clearly in the age of AI is that what AI does is it dissolves the app ecosystem. You don't need an app ecosystem in the age of AI, especially agentic AI, because it will do it all for you. You therefore don't need an Apple ecosystem. In 5, 10, 15 years time, we will not be using apps, right? There'll be a whole new space there and a whole new hardware interface with how we integrate with things. It's not going to be people tapping on a phone, tapping on apps. That's not the future in 5 years time. Something else is going to be coming along, and it's going to very clearly be involving with artificial intelligence, and it's also going to very clearly involve some very sophisticated and interesting intelligent hardware. And that's where I think that is the critical weakness of Apple. Its failure in the Vision Pro, its failure in the car project demonstrates it's not able to figure out this advanced fusion of hardware and software in a way that the consumer will find interesting. So let's see where this takes us into the future. What are your thoughts? What do you think is the future of Apple?